Today, the Cure Chronicles is delighted to welcome Maria Mejia. Maria has been living with HIV for more than 30 years and is an ambassador for National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. She's also a blogger and an HIV advocate and activist who dedicates her time to building awareness about HIV and working to reduce HIV stigma. Maria is a global ambassador for a nonprofit women's organization called The Well Project, whose mission is to change the course of the HIV/AIDS pandemic through a unique and comprehensive focus on women and girls. She is a proud proponent of the fact that living with HIV is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the Cure Chronicles today.
Thank you very much for having me. Like I said, it's an honor to be invited to be able to have a platform so everyone could hear my message of hope.
Well, no, thank you. It's really our pleasure and our honor to have you here. And this show is about you. You've been dealing with an HIV diagnosis for quite a long time, and you had a very interesting journey that included a long period of not being treated. Back in those days, HIV was a deadly disease frequently, right? I mean, well, of course, it's not HIV that gets you, but it's the consequences, AIDS, right?
Yes.
So how did you avoid that with that? Were you just lucky? Could maybe just go ahead and go back to your diagnosis and tell us a little bit about, sort of your journey through diagnosis to starting to get on medication and, why you did that. And then, to today, what it's like, sort of dealing with the challenges of suppressing the virus,
And being a long-term survivor of 34 years.
Long-term survivor, exactly. Share that with me.
For me to kind of get to the diagnosis part, I was a teenager. I have to go to the beginning of like my story. And then because there was a consequence for me too. I think that put me in an environment for me to contract HIV. I really do believe that. And I believe that all those things that happened to me were horrible. And that, as they continue to happen. Just obstacles and things in life made me the activist that I am today. So, my first memory is at the age of 3, being sexually molested by an uncle. So that obviously, and I was a child, and that the shame that comes with it. I mean, obviously, I'm a sort of survivor of that as well. But that broke that little girl. That little girl that was broken for so long. I also grew up in a very violent and abusive household. My father passed away 4 years old, and I love my father. And I talk about forgiveness as well, because I do believe that in forgiving, we set ourselves free from the chains that, attach us to the bitterness or hate or anger. So I hated my father as a child, and he was not sexually, he didn't sexually molest me. He was very abusive verbally and emotionally to myself and my mother. I can remember him calling me, that I was going to be nothing but I don't even want to say the word that I was not going to amount to anything. I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Oh my gosh.
I never understood why he would do that. And, but then further down, many years down the line, I sat down with him now, not as that little girl that was extremely scared of him, because he was a, patriarchal, extremely conservative Catholic, alpha male, and Colombian, and so I went to his childhood, and I understood a lot of the things, even though I'm not excusing it. I also have forgiven my uncle, not excusing it either. As a matter of fact, he doesn't know I forgave him, because forgiveness is for myself. And so growing up in that household that was so violent, at the age of 13, I could not take it anymore. So I was placed with, counselors and this and that. Obviously, I started acting out in school at the age of 12. By the age of 13, I ran away to the streets, and they put me in the foster care system in Miami, Florida. Because I was born in Medellin, Colombia, but I was brought at the age of 3 to the United States by my parents. And in the foster care system, they tried to sexually abuse me as well. And by that time, I was around 13. I said, oh no. I said, I will not be the prey anymore. I'm going to be now the predator. So I became an extremely violent person. I'm an ex-gang member. a very violent street gang. But looking back now, I talk to so many kids that are in trouble and that I could relate to, because I'm a very versatile person. I could talk to anyone in that has gone through anything in life, from someone that's in prison to people that are in Congress and Senate that I speak to a lot as a human rights activist. And those kids, as I run away to the streets, they became my family. They embraced me, and I became the girlfriend of the leader of the gang, who has passed away of complications of AIDS many years ago. We were all teenagers. We were all from broken homes. We all had been sexually abused, physically abused, or emotionally abused. So I also teach about we should not judge, and we should not. What my father basically embedded in me, he broke my self-esteem. So when you are told you are nothing, or you are told that you're going to end up like your sister, I had a sister that was murdered in Miami, shot 7 times in the head and put in the trunk of a car. And he would tell me since I was a child, you're going to end up just like your sister, 6 feet under. I think now that I'm, 49 years old, I've acquired a lot of wisdom. I think that I put myself in a lot of settings to maybe have that happen to me, because I've been through it, everything, kidnapping. I mean, anything that you could think of as bad, I've been through it, but I have survived it. So
that'd be another way to build self-esteem, is to realize that you're a survivor under very adverse
I
conditions.
built this. It took me a long time, because I hated myself. I hated everything about me. I hated God. I hated myself. I hated life. I would tell my mother as a child, she was washing the dishes, maybe crying because he had insulted her or something. And how can I kill my father? A child saying that to their mother, that's very hard. But at the same time, I love my father. I love him.
It's hard to not,
And I forgave him, and I forgave him. And he understood, because I am a very direct person, and I'm not the type of person that I will be, I respect obviously my elders, but I told him right in his face when I was able to talk and communicate, because he didn't let me even express myself or cry as a child. I said, you did this and this and this and this and this. He's like, no, it's not like that. And I was like, yes, it is like that. I said, listen, what did you tell me about your childhood? And that's kind of like how I came to forgiveness, listening to,
his experience, right?
And he was also, I think, bipolar, and many things, but he was also had a lot of wonderful things, because my father was not just, he had a lot of, like,
That's remarkable that you could do that. I mean, that you could.
Oh my God, my father's
forgive him, but it is typically something that is not just, sort of, well, let's say that the forgiveness is sometimes a process of self-healing as well,
I was basically in the gang from the ages of 13 to maybe 16, almost 17 years old. And I remember I saw a lot of things. There were a lot of violence. But the person that was my first boyfriend, who was the leader, that somehow had a lot of understood that I didn't belong there. Because you see, even though I came from violence, coming from a very upper middle class home, ultra conservative Catholic family, very conservative. I'm like the more flashy one or whatever. But my foundation was my mother, with her teachings of respect, of morals, of dignity, of self-respect, and all the things that she embedded in me as well. And seeing her example, because she's the one that taught me to forgive. She was with my father. Yes, obviously, I told on my father when I went into the foster care system that he abused me, that he did this. She didn't have the strength as 25 years younger than him to leave with 2 children, my brother, little brother, and myself. So I had to make the decision at the age of 13, where I had enough. I said, I cannot deal with this anymore. So I had to make the decision for her, and I broke the family. I broke my family, and I sometimes also get a little nostalgic and sad, because I think to myself, if my father wouldn't have been that way, and I mean, that's not truth 100%, because this could happen to anyone. It doesn't matter. But if I would have been raised in a normal home or of love and respect, I most likely would have been already like married with kids and grandkids and been a physician, a lawyer, or whatever I want to be. Because although I wasn't a street gang and everything, I have many gifts that God has given me. I am not like an extremist religious person either, but I am a person that I do believe in God. I do believe in the teachings of my beliefs of Christ, which is part of my culture, and his teachings of love and forgiveness and all those things that also, like I said, my mother was the foundation. And also I have a lot of things on my father. He was a great orator. And I got that from him. This is natural. He was a natural speaker, and he was a very generous man. He was a very, like a charmer, and he had a lot of wonderful things as well, generous. And so I cannot only speak about the bad things, but that environment set me to be in the foster care system, which is horrendous. And this is my story is not the only story of people trying to abuse you in whatever type of way. It happens to a lot of kids, and I speak to a lot of them that are in trouble. So I was able to, everything that I have gone through in my life has helped me to save many lives. Not only as far as HIV, because like you said, I haven't even talked about HIV.
Yeah.
But my first boyfriend, the leader of the gang, didn't know he had HIV. He was a teenager. He was experimenting with IV drug use, and I didn't know that. His mother, his sister, and himself, they passed away many years ago. But he didn't know he had HIV. Back then it was called GRID. I got it in 1988.
That's really early. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
gay-related immunodeficiency GRID, right? And it had nothing to do with gay, and that was misleading as well, right? As a straight person, you're thinking, okay, you're safe, right?
Last thing on my mind that I was very actually, oddly enough, I love to read, and I'm self-taught, so I was aware of many things that were going on. So I was aware of HIV and AIDS through Ryan White, which is one of my big examples. I'm a little activist that fought so much, and a true example, an inspiration. And what they did to him was horrendous. And as a child, they didn't have no compassion. But people, like I said, when people they don't have education, they're ignorant. Ignorant fuels fear, and that fear could fuel, discrimination, stigma, which continues to exist and is the number one, because see, people are still dying of complications of AIDS because they don't want to go to the clinic and take their medication, because they're going to see them, because of the stigma, because of the shame. I have so many people that have died throughout these 34 years of me living with this. But anyway, I didn't know I had HIV.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So initially you get it because your partner is using intravenous drugs. He contracts HIV. Yeah, and then you end up with it. And then did you know right away that you had HIV? When did you get diagnosed? So what year was that, if you could kind of just give us some context?
I had at the age of 15, I contracted HIV in 1988. I was 15 years old. So, but I didn't know. So around the age of almost 16, almost 17, I sat down, and my father no longer was in the home. And you would think, okay, it's time to go back home. He's gone. But it was too late. I was broken already. I didn't want to hear anything. I just wanted to self-destruct, I think, full of anger.
Sure.
And but I was tired of the streets at that point. I remember crying, and he says, "You know what? You don't belong here. You don't belong in the streets. Go back home with your mother and your little brother, and you're free. I'm going to set you free." And that's very hard for that to happen, for someone to set you free from a gang. Because there's really no way out of that. So that's why I say a non-active gang member. And like I said, respect me.
It also shows you that people in gangs are humans too, and you may find a variety of personalities, and including people that are caring and supportive. It sounds like that's what your boyfriend was like. He felt like you had potential for a better future without the gang membership. And somehow, worked it so that you could have a smooth escape from that. But then, so you're 17 years old,
I go back.
Yeah. And then when do you find out that you
So I
have
returned back
HIV?
home. I returned back home, and I said I was happy to return back home. And I told my mom, I said, I want to change my life. I was finally seeing the light. I said I want to enter a program called Job Course, which, by the way, I have to blog because I'm a blogger as well and a writer. A blog about them. I'm going to do that before the year is over, because it's been many years I haven't given them their props, because there was a lot of discrimination back then, and they didn't. I found out in Job Corps. Basically, I went to a social worker. They put me in Job Corps. It's like a second opportunity place for teens in trouble to start doing like type of like a vocational education. And then from there, a lot go to college and a university, and some right now have PhDs, And so the social worker said, well, we do not want you to be in Miami. Obviously, you got to get away from that environment. We're going to take you, send you to Kentucky. I was about to be 18 years old. The year was 1991, and in Kentucky. So I was very happy there. I was there only a month though. So when all the teens go into Job Corps, they get tested for everything: normal blood panel, pregnancy, HIV, and everything. As I told you, I was knowledgeable about HIV from what I saw on TV. Gay white men in San Francisco. They're strong warriors, fighters, for many causes.
So did you get diagnosed because you had a standard panel of tests for Job Corps? Is that what happened?
Right, exactly. Everyone that went in just got tested for the same thing. So I remember that we were like in a group, in a room, where they did, because I became a tester in the future as well for HIV, because I was told in a very uncompassionate way by a doctor, by a physician. And I remember I knew more than anyone about HIV, and but I never thought it would happen.
You didn't know you had it?
No.
And that's amazing. So you knew a lot about HIV, but you still didn't know you had it, and you probably didn't even realize that you were at risk from your history. Yeah.
As it was a gay man's condition, the last thing in a teenager's mind is I have HIV, especially in those times. I was healthy, strong. I am a very strong person genetically anyway. HIV has not managed to destroy me.
How did you find out then? I mean, so did they actually just like right after the blood test call you up on the phone? Hey, Maria, did you know you have HIV? I mean,
no, I wish it would have been that sweet. No, it was in the campus. And then I was about to turn 18 years old. My birthday is April 11th, and I find out April 18th, 1 week after my 18th birthday. That was my I guess, my gift. Finding out that that I had basically, they didn't even say HIV. They started sending me these little slips to my dorm, because you see, it was a huge campus that had a clinic. So I went to my social worker there, and I said, I would like to go to Miami for a week to celebrate my birthday with my family. And they were like, okay, but you have to go through the clinic to get discharged. I did get like 2 or 3 slips from the clinic saying that we need to see you in the clinic before this. And I don't know,
that was the first time you actually paid attention to the slip, is they were like, you can't go home until you go to the clinic?
Well, I had to, because when the slips, I would look at them and I would tear them up. I was like, why do they want me in the clinic? I'm not going to go all the way over there and walk 20 blocks. That's what I thought. And so I had to go. So I went. I didn't think anything. So the doctor, I remember, he was very, very angry. He had like, his eyes were like very, like he was like with horror, but anger. Why didn't you come to the clinic if we've been sending you slips? And I responded, I said, 18, I don't know. By that time, I felt he was going to say something. So the first thing that came to my mind was, I have cancer because I smoke cigarettes. I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink. I said, I have cancer because I smoke cigarettes. So he sat me down in a cold room did not prepare me, was not compassionate, he was a really harsh person in that cold room by myself with no family around, nothing. He just blurted out, you have AIDS.
AIDS. He didn't even say you have HIV, because it's really different, isn't it? Right? I mean, did you actually have AIDS? Did you have symptoms?
I have an AIDS diagnosis, because obviously back then there was no medicine and there was no access to treatment.
So they just assumed like, oh, you have a death sentence. He literally told you at the time that he told you it was a death sentence, and he gave the information to you in that way. I mean, wow, that really Wow, that really does lack compassion, doesn't it? That
A
really,
very, a very ignorant physician. Like, and I talk to many of them that are not only studying now, obviously, medicine or to be HIV specialist or epidemiologist. I love medicine. It's like I'm a doctor with a diploma, really. I read a lot. That's what I did. I was compulsively trying to get my hands on
I've got to
everything.
tell you that I've never heard a story that cold about how people.
No, that's horrible.
Yeah, that's the worst I've ever heard. I've heard people here that they found out they had cancer that way, that it was in a very cold clinical way with no empathy, right? But this is the first time I've, that's the first time I've heard that. Now, I'm sure it happens all the time, right? It's just the people that I've talked to. I bet you that your experience is actually more characteristic of finding out something like that around that time, especially in the deep South, right? You're in Kentucky.
I'm in
Right?
Kentucky,
Yeah, how strange.
but that is not an excuse because
Oh, no, I'm not excusing it, but
no,
I'm just saying that think about, like, you are actually telling a story that may be realistic for many people who found out about it around the same time as you, right? That you're actually telling a story that they can identify with, because I've heard a lot of stories where, the people were really supportive. They happen to be in a great environment where when they found out they had HIV, they had a whole community around them that was going to help them through it, including the doctors, the clinic, and all that stuff. You didn't get that. You got the exact opposite in the spectrum. And it's important for people to know that, some people have had to go through that.
When you are a physician, because I work with a lot of scientists and physicians, right? I mean, I have like 20 jobs, but they take an oath, and you have to have compassion and empathy as a physician. I know it becomes like something normal for them to see death. I mean, I myself have a lot of physicians in my own family, and they're a little cold, but he, first of all, shouldn't have never told me I have AIDS because he didn't test me for my CD4 count, which is what they check for what the
AIDS is the consequences of HIV. HIV is just a virus, right? And AIDS takes a while to develop. So he actually gave you a diagnosis that was well in advance of the information that he had.
Yeah. Exactly. That's like me telling a person that, because I'm in remission of cancer as well, by the way, I've also fought that. And that's like me telling a person with cancer without testing certain things, you have metastasis. Or
right, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Knowing. So right now,
and to say it so coldly too, that's just remarkable. But it sometimes happens. That's unusual with doctors, but sometimes happens.
If that happened in these times, which they do sometimes happen in other countries and in places, that doctor will get fired. I will make sure that physician will be fired.
So at this point, though, now you know that you have HIV. You've actually been told you have AIDS. You must be in shock. So,
Yes.
What did they prescribe you? Some meds right away? Meds didn't even exist at the time, right?
One medicine called AZT, which was extremely a high toxic medication that was chemotherapy for cancer that actually was removed as chemotherapy to treat cancer patients because of the toxicity. So he tells me I have AIDS. I remember I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just put my head down. I was in shock, like you said, and I said, I'm never gonna get married. I'm never gonna have kids. My life is over. And I remember that there was not even a pamphlet that he could give me. There was nothing in that room. It was just a cold gray room. And so the dean of Jockwork, I guess they contacted them. There was not even no cell phones or nothing. He came all the way to where I was. Obviously, I was distraught. Teenager, as a little kid. And I remember walking with him. He walked me through the campus to my dorm. And he says, Maria, you don't have to leave Job Corps if you don't want to. We have another kid here that has HIV, and we're giving him AZT. And I said, no, thank you. I said, but I want to go home and die. I don't want, because it's a death sentence. People were dropping like flies. And that's the reality.
It's really interesting, though, but that dean was really ahead of his time, right?
That's
like, a lot of people were just too scared to even be around people that have been diagnosed with HIV. So he walks you across the campus and he says to you, look, you still have choices. You could stay here. We already have one person that's here being treated with AZT, and you can stay in Job Corps or stay on the campus or whatever. I mean, that is at least a little bit of light, a little bit of a light within a very dark, kind of environment where the doctor did it all wrong and the dean turned out to be a little bit ahead of his time and actually show you some love, right?
It
Yeah.
was just something that I talked
Respect.
about with
Wow.
her. So, obviously I don't want to stay, I wanted to go. So then I had to go into the dorm, and I went into the, there was different rooms, the girls' dorm. And I remember I walked in my dorm, there was 4 girls there that were like, like bunk beds. Each room had like 2 bunk beds, and I remember there was the girl, one of my roommates there, she was crying. And I said, what's wrong? When I went in, and then she goes, I'm pregnant. And she was crying, and I hugged her. And she was scared because of parents and this and that. And I said, oh my God. And she goes, and I started crying too for her, not for me, even not for myself yet. And she goes, I started then crying for her. She goes, why are you crying? I said, because I have AIDS. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah. And then she goes, I'm so sorry. And she hugged me again, which I guess that gave her that thing that you thought about my childhood and your childhood. Okay, I'm pregnant, but she has AIDS. She's going to die. That's what you thought, death.
Oh, I mean, everything's relative, isn't it? We all have challenges, but I think what's remarkable about that is in a world that totally misunderstood HIV and AIDS at the time, and even in a situation where it was completely incurable, she turned around and gave you a hug and gave you some sympathy and some empathy and some support. Once again, like a point of light within the darkness. I think that's a wonderful part of your story, but at the same time, I see overall, this is a really tough time. So you head home. It sounds like you forego the AZT.
So I took well, I said I wanted to leave, to come back home to Miami. I went to the social worker, was getting me tickets. It took 3 days. And so in those 3 days, I was kind of like crying, but I had to make that walk after this girl told me she was pregnant, to go in this hall to get on the phone and call my mother and tell her that I had AIDS. And that was very difficult.
Yeah.
Like I said, she's been my example of strength as well. And she's cried, she hasn't done it in front of me because that will kill me. That would destroy me. She has never cried in front of me. She said, don't worry about it. Come home. In my heart, I know that you're going to be okay. Just come home. And my mom is a very compassionate, like an angel, and a strong, very strong woman. Like I said,
yeah. It sounds like she gave you a lot of sort of things to hold on to, even through your youth. Like, even though you weren't living with her, she had given you some kind of like building blocks of morality and spirituality that gave you anchor points that helped you survive your childhood, right? And then it turns out she's stronger than you realize too, but you took a chance, right? You picked up the phone and you told her over the phone what the story was. And she came through for you again. That's another touching element of this story.
I think that I would have probably been dead if I would have, because I know a lot of people that have been rejected by their family, but that's not my mother. My mother is a very compassionate, loving human being. And like I said, even though my father and her were separated, obviously, she was there until his death. Like she was there to helping, accompanying him in the hospital. I mean, like she is my example. So, right. I've been an activist for 24 years. A lot of the highlights now, when I have interviews from all over the world and stuff, they highlight my mother a lot because she is really my foundation. And so I went back to Miami, and she sat me down. That's when the kind of like the self-stigma started because of the ignorance that was going on. We decided to go back to Colombia. And that became, it was even worse in Colombia because we had no social media. I didn't know anyone with HIV. There was no information. There was nothing. And she sat me down, she says, you cannot tell anyone, the family or friends, that you have HIV because they will discriminate you. She didn't do it because she wasn't ashamed or anything. She did it to protect me. But it was hard for 10 years.
They won't understand, and you don't, you can't educate them, so you have to keep it secret.
I don't know. And I have aunts and stuff that are very judgmental. They're better now because I have taught them. but they're like very Catholic, very judgmental, very, and even ignorance, but I taught them, I educated them throughout those years.
So you were open with your family then?
No, we came up, my mom and I came up with, let's see what condition, as you see, I call it a condition, a human condition.
Yeah. So basically you sort of like, you presented it in a different way so you didn't have to deal with the stigma of your family.
But the first 10 years, they thought I had leukemia because we came up with either lupus or leukemia.
Yeah.
And leukemia, let's go for leukemia because
Right.
I was gonna die. That's the reality. And so we went back into Colombia to my grandparents' house, and believe it or not, for those 10 years I was there, I was put there for a reason. I was put, and that's a chapter of my book. I have a book called From a Warrior's Passion and Pain. And I became the caregiver of my grandparents, and I gave them the most beautiful last years of their life. I mean, they were my children. I didn't have children, but they became my children. I would bathe them, I would clothe them, I would change their diapers, I would dress them up, like in their times, with the gloves and the mints and all. I would play with them like they were my little dolls. I would put their music, which is tango music, and all those beautiful things. I love the elderly. So
it was actually a good part of your life in a way.
That's actually when I became that's what I call my spiritual transformation, because I no longer hated God, or I started loving myself. I saw that I was a worthy, not like my father said that I wasn't. I was worthy, and I saw that I had a mission to, or I had this thing in me of helping others. I didn't have to do that. It came natural. I wanted to, and
I think we all have that inside. Actually, that can be very fulfilling to to serve, to help other people. It really is. Yeah. Well, look, if you don't mind, I'm going to shift a little bit here because I want to know what it's like now. Okay, so you are on, I assume you're on antiretroviral therapy. You're suppressing the virus. Are you suppressed to the point that you're undetectable?
Absolutely. As I said, for the first 10 years in Colombia, I had no medication. So, I did have some family that are physicians that I disclosed towards the end. They tested my T cells because we didn't even have a viral load count, which is what monitors how much virus we have in our blood.
Right.
And we didn't have that. So they told me, you're in the red line. I had, normal person has from 600 to 1,500 T cells, which is what a part of our immune system, not all our immune system, but that is a very important part of our immune system to help us with different things like viruses and bacteria and things. So I said, what do you mean I'm in the red line? He goes, you need to go back to the United States. And you need to get on treatment because there's better treatment there. You have 39 T cells. I went down to 39. That's
so what you're talking about is your CD4 count, it sounds like. So you had a CD4 count of 39. Yeah, that's a devastating.
I mean, that's AIDS. Because you see, AIDS has a lot of stigma, the word. A lot of people say ignorant things, and I educate them because language matters. For example, they say, oh, you caught AIDS, or you have AIDS. No, it's like, I explain it this way, very simple. It's like metastasis to cancer. Their immune system goes extremely down, and they get complications. They die of pneumonia, and it's never really dying of AIDS. AIDS is the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. It's a syndrome. Basically, your T cells, when your T cells go below 200, you get that diagnosis.
You're getting into that zone. So you came back to the United States. How many years since you started treatment? And how many years have you been fully suppressed now?
I came back into the year 2001. They retested me again. I remember the late Dr. Oprah, he's passed. He said, Maria, how do you feel? And I said, well, I feel like a candle that's withering away. Because I was still strong and I wasn't hospitalized or anything. I was still walking and looking like this.
And you hadn't gotten any symptoms yet, huh? That's amazing.
There was starting to.
Okay.
Like a thrombocytopenia, which is of extreme low platelets in my blood, which I could get spontaneous hemorrhages. I mean, it could have gone. I even had an extremely low platelets that the doctors were in shock why I wasn't just bleeding out of my eyes, ears, nose, everything. I am a very blessed individual. I'm here because of a mission. That's why I didn't die. And I fought because I had two options: either lay down in a bed and die, or fight and survive and then thrive, which is what I'm doing now and helping others. So he said, Maria, you are dying. If you don't get on treatment, I give you a month to live. And as are you ready to take treatment? He was like very like strong, like an 80-year-old strong. And I said, yes, Dr. Roper, I'm ready. So he put me on treatment. It was extremely hard for my body to adapt to because back then the medicine was very toxic. And
What sort of side effects did you get from the meds at the time?
I felt like I was dying. I mean, I was a month in bed.
So you felt sick, huh?
I felt like my brain was burning, like my veins were on fire. Like,
Oh my gosh.
it was a horrible, it was not easy, but there was even worse ones in the mid-90s that I didn't have access to. A lot of my friends have a lot of complications because of those meds. We're like the guinea pigs for the people that are diagnosed now with
Right,
the injectables that have, the medications that they take now that are less toxic. I have thousands of emails a week from people that are recently diagnosed or people that have
And they need to understand that that's right, that even those side effects are really history. That's no longer the situation today. So how long did it take for you to get controlled? And what is it like today now for you?
Okay, it took 4 weeks for me to become undetectable.
Wow.
And that's usually what it takes. That's how good the medicine works. That's why I'm a treatment advocate as well.
It's amazing.
And I'm one of the people that I'm one of the first ambassadors for U=U, undetectable equals untransmittable, with the prevention access. We fought the medical community globally to say the truth that when you are virally suppressed, you cannot pass HIV to anyone.
That's an important thing for people to know. That's right.
Of course, because the stigma is easier to disclose when you know that you could tell a person, and there's science backing me up. I'm not saying it is scientists and studies, that undetectable equals untransmittable. We've gone so far. Yes, I recently wrote a blog that was very hard for me to write, which was called HIV Took Away My Motherhood. And because in the circumstances that I was in, I didn't want to bring a child to this world in those times, because my child would have died, most likely. But people say, don't get sad, Maria. You know how many young people you've mentored? Those are your children and your grandparents were your children, which helped me heal a lot. And that is true, but that's something that I'm very nostalgic.
Also, nowadays, if you are well controlled on antiretrovirals and modern antiretrovirals, you can have a child, and the chances of passing it to the child are exceedingly almost zero.
And I'll tell you something even
so you don't have to lose that opportunity for motherhood even.
Well, no, for me is
for you it's different, because think about the timing of it, right? That's different.
Mentally embedded that by my mom, it shouldn't happen because this is the consequences. And it was just like something that I blocked myself from, because I had doctors here telling me, Maria, I have a child. Maria, I will be like, no. Like, it was just like
even you had a hard time sort of accepting that. Yeah. Because this is something we know at this point.
Right.
That you can have children and they will not be HIV positive. And if you're well controlled, you can have a husband and you will not have them. You
can live almost a normal life, and it's so wonderful. Like, I work for, like I said, many places, but one of them, which is one of the most important places for me, is a women's organization, women and girls organization called the Well Project, who basically we're a group of women from all over the world. I'm one of their global ambassadors, and one of the first people that, when it started the organization, because you really look research, there's not a lot of organizations for women. So we're very powerful women that empower other women, and they empower their communities. So it has gone so far, science has gone so far, that one of our members from the Well Project, her name is Cece, she took the risk, and because of undetectable equals untransmittable, she's breastfeeding her child. Now you can breastfeed your child. You not transmit HIV to your husband or to your wife, to whomever. You don't have the burden that I had, because almost all my partners, long-term relationships, were HIV negative, even though they didn't really care. They said, we're all gonna die from something. I love you, and it was like that. I was really never stigmatized as far as rejection.
Oh, that's good. For relationships, it didn't really get in the way.
For me,
because I still have people
crying to me, emailing me, sending me messages. It's mostly heterosexual men, which are the most in the closet, and they commit suicide. They are, because they are afraid to come out to their family.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be told that
It's double stigma, right? They're heterosexual, but everybody will immediately think they're gay. Which is, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's so funny. Well, and not funny, but I mean tragic. Yeah.
Horrible. Actually,
Wow.
they all feel lonely. They all say, I'm never gonna find someone that loves me. And I say, listen, first of all, if you disclose to someone, because I'm kind of harsh in my education, I don't baby them, because I come from a time where I fought in time, well, I shouldn't even be here. You got I'm also one of the founders of the largest international support groups in the world, with more than 40,000 active members in English and in Spanish. I founded that group many years ago. So basically, I did everything that I thought that I would have liked to have in those times that I had nothing. I didn't have nothing, internet, no support groups, no nothing. I told them, listen, stop. I understand that I have to be sometimes a little bit more compassionate, but stop with this thing that your life is over, No, you have good medicine, you get married, you go to school, you have access to treatment. You cannot go and disclose to someone, oh, I have HIV, because that in itself, I tell them, there's people get rejected because they have a child, because or a different religion, or whatever the case may be. So I try to empower them, baby them. But I do recognize that sometimes I have to be a little softer, but sometimes I just don't have patience, because I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friends of mine that have died. Almost a whole generation that was wiped out by this condition. So I have, as a long-term survivor, we're a group of people, around the world, and there's not many of us. And we have a lot of special needs. We have PTSD, we have anxiety, we have depression. I've written a lot about it, and survivor's guilt, because I see children dying, I see a grandmother dying, and why am I still here? But now I don't question that. I know why I'm here. I know what my mission is and my purpose. And until I fulfill that mission and purpose that God put me on this earth for, not only with HIV, but all the things that I have done, because I'm very involved in politics and in human rights, and especially with access to healthcare is a human right. So I have to go and fight with Congress and senators, and I'm very involved in that. My dream is to be a congresswoman, which hopefully I will be one day. Maybe I will be. A lot of people believe that because I'm very involved. I've already helped pass legislation, for not only for people living with HIV, but for the LGBTQI community. And I'm involved in social justice and racial justice and women's rights, undocumented immigrants. I don't talk about this a lot publicly.
When I think about it, like, you've taken this incredibly diverse and really difficult background, and you've turned it into a series of experiences that are really valuable to other people. I keep hearing you say that people are writing to you, and that sounds like a really good thing. It sounds like you're an amazing resource of experience within this special group of really long-term HIV survivors. How can people get in touch with you? Do you have like a website, or what do you how do you like to communicate?
Well, I am all over social media, and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, with the HIV in the middle, because I have no shame, because there is no shame of having this, like I said. And that's why I put it in people's faces.
It's empowering just by itself, right there. Yeah.
I put it. I'm the only person in the world that has that. And my name is and that could find me. They could put in Google, and that they'll find a lot of my work, and a lot of my interviews, and a lot of my things that I have done for communities of things that people don't know about that I do, because it's behind the scenes and it's not paid. I'm contacting one of the contacts in the United States for people that are undocumented from not only from Latin American countries, all over the world, that come here with no access to treatment. And I have the key points in every state, not federally funded by the government, but funded by private donors.
Well, so even people that cannot find
no documents
can contact you and can help.
I have the contact.
Yeah, so they can connect. You can connect them with treatment.
With a doctor.
Yeah.
education, free transportation, free lives. So
Yeah.
I'm saving lives. I have saved so many lives by doing
I'll
that.
tell you, Maria, you are an amazingly energetic person. I mean,
Very
and with
passionate.
amazing life experience. And I just, I really appreciate you sharing it so openly with us today. And I think that, people can take a lot of strength from you by example, right? That, all of these challenges was survivable, HIV for you just being one of them. And also, it just seems like, you're an amazing resource for the community. And I know that everybody listening to this video will really appreciate that as well. So thank you again so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you very much, and I wish you much love and light.